First, we all understand this is an unprecedented crisis. We haven't seen a pandemic near this caliber since 1918. And now more than ever, most Americans realize what we already know, that our food supply is absolutely critical to the survival of our nation. I'm so pleased to have our farmers, growers, ranchers on the line, members of our Florida Farm Bureau, as well as Orange, Osceola, and Polk County Farm Bureaus on board. And as Mr. Verde had mentioned, this will also be available for so many of our members of Florida Agriculture who can't be here today to answer their questions as well. I want to take a moment to thank you all for the great work you're doing to help feed Central Florida, Florida, and the nation. We know how important what you do every day is and how critical that federal partnership is with our agriculture community here in Florida. As a brief update, we know we have 22,000 cases in Florida as of today, and we're assessed to have a peak of around May 3rd, although that keeps changing, obviously, as new data comes in. So we know we're getting near the peak and may see a slow plateauing and glide path down. And so we need to not only be prepared during this great pandemic, but be prepared as we slowly but surely, in consultation with our healthcare professionals, start reopening the economy in the interest of safety and public health. We're so pleased to have Commissioner Nikki Fried on the line, who needs no introduction. She has been a huge advocate for Florida agriculture and has been so generous with her time to appear on many of these calls. Commissioner Fried, thanks for being on the line. I know you have a message for our local farmers and really appreciate all the great work you're doing.
Thank you, Congressman Soto, for again allowing me this opportunity to speak to your constituents and your neck of the woods, as well as so much of our farmers across the state of Florida. As you all know, we are in this together. Many of you are worried about keeping your family safe, but also keeping your farms going. Agriculture, as we know, was #2 economic driver for our state, and then during these times when our economy has slowed down and tourism has ceased to exist, agriculture is #1. And so we've got to do everything we can to protect our #1 economic driver. We also know that food service demand has taken a really hard hit. Many of our producers sell to large-scale purchasers like restaurants, schools, Disney, cruise line industry, and with all of that plummeting, the bulk purchases have stopped. So our crops sit in the fields, and farmers are facing huge losses, which are not viable to harvest them without enough buyers out there. And with the 1.4 million agriculture jobs on the line in Central Florida, we understand how difficult this all becomes. But rest assured, our team is working tirelessly to find solutions, which is my priority in preventing loss of Florida crops and ensuring producers receive all the help that they need. So these are a couple of things that we have been doing and working around the clock to get going. Last week, we launched Keep Florida Growing, a new web page with resources for ag producers and consumers. It will help our farmers and ranchers find information on USDA assistance, SBA loans, state bridge loans, and all the other resources that may be available to our farmers. On there, you'll also find our Florida Farm to You commodities list. We have been connecting ag producers directly with buyers, food banks, and consumers. So producers can go on, just use online form to list the products, and buyers and consumers will find Florida-grown fruits, vegetables, seafood, poultry, and eggs, all on this one-stop shop. It also provides to our consumers where you can find U-Pick farms to buy Florida-grown produce and where to find the local and nearest food banks and emergency meals. All this is available at fdac.gov/keepfloridagrowing. It's a very interactive website and very user-friendly, so really encouraging everybody to go ahead and to go on there. We're also asking right now, we're working on a story because we know so many of our ag producers are donating so much of their food already to food banks, to local churches and religious institutions, to schools. If you are one of those farmers who have been donating that, please send us also communication, and you can go either directly through us or through the congressman, because we really want to show the rest of the state how amazing our agriculture industry is and what they are doing to help really feed our state in times of needs. We're also connecting our growers with state agencies like Department of Corrections to increase purchases of Florida-grown products. For instance, down in Miami-Dade, we connected the Department of Corrections to Miami-Dade farmers, and they spent almost $300,000 down in Dade County. So these are just a couple of examples, and we're asking our farmers who want to participate in any types of those programs to also go online to the My Florida Marketplace and become an authorized vendor. It's a really easy, simple form. If you need any help or assistance, we will be absolutely willing and able to walk you through the program to be able to deal with any of these agencies. We're also working with the USDA to combat and prevent illegal dumping of products in our markets. In fact, I had a call yesterday with one of the ambassadors for the Department of Commerce to continue pushing through the issues that we've had with USMCA, and they were supposed to do town halls across the state of Florida to hear directly from our specialty crop growers. That was supposed to be last week. Obviously, that has been postponed. I asked that they actually start just doing it virtually, so that way we don't lag any time for any of the solutions that might come out of how we combat the implications of USMCA. I've also been, issues, and of course, those are issues that we were dealing with, and the congressman as well, way before coronavirus. But what coronavirus has done is highlight what the problems were and the implications and the direct impact this is having on our state. I've also talked to a lot of our major retailers like Publix and Walmart, and to make sure that they are buying Florida-grown produce and to increase their buys. We know that a couple of our outlets across the state have exactly done that. Also, I've asked retailers to end their milk purchase limits and working to connect milk producers with cold storage and transportation options so that they're not having to dump the milk. I mean, we've all seen, unfortunately, those stories, not just in Florida, but across the country. So we've asked them to stop that, as well as also with eggs, too. And I have signed an executive order last week allowing egg producers to package their eggs in clear packages and not have to spend the extra time labeling them, as long as the food stores then have all the ample information, and the food stores themselves will put a bulk label in that section of the expiration and the grade of the eggs. I've also asked USDA and Congress to speed up the direct assistance to farmers, increase federal purchases of Florida-grown, and create federal exchanges for our commodities. And we've also redirected our Fresh from Florida trade show money to marketing at some of those at-risk crops. FDAC's team is also looking to fill orders for school districts and food banks with more Florida-grown products. So we have asked for more leniency and flexibility from the dollars that are coming down from the federal government for this specific issue. And we're aggressively working with our foreign trade partners to ensure our orders remain consistent and robust. I know that each of you are doing your best during this difficult time, and there's a lot of uncertainty right now. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me and to my team for anything that you need. We are problem solvers. We look for solutions. Nothing is too outside the box for us to give it a shot. So if you have ideas or solutions, or you're doing something really great in your community that you would like us to showcase and highlight, we are doing that and starting to really put out a lot of good positive PR for agriculture. So please get in touch with us and let us know if there's some things that you would like us to highlight. We are here to provide information about resources available and the various financial relief programs offered by the SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loan, the Paycheck Protection Program, and Florida Small Business Emergency Bridge Loan Program. And so we encourage all growers to learn more about these financial options and let us know if there's any assistance that we could help you with, and to make sure that you're applying right away. I know that some of these dollars have been already, there's enough applications in the pipeline to fill them, and we are extremely hopeful and believe that there's going to be additional dollars sent out. So keep gathering your financial information, keep getting ready to apply for those applications and those loans. And the congressman would definitely be better suited to answer that, but from everything that I have heard, there will be more money coming down the pipeline, and so please continue staying focused on getting those applications done. So really, from Central Florida and beyond, we are in this together, and we are going to be here every step along the way. And you can get in touch with us either by following us on Facebook or Twitter, or go right on to our website at fdac.gov We check every single communication that comes into our office, and we are going to be here every step along the way. So on that, I hand it back over to you, Congressman Soto. And again, thank you for all of your leadership. You have been a true champion when it comes to agriculture and all the needs for our state.
Thank you, Commissioner Freed. And I'm very pleased you talked about the dumping of milk that so many Americans have seen and been frustrated with. Of course, our dairy farmers are the most frustrated with it, as well as the egg supply at a time when we have so many families that are wondering whether they're going to get their next meal. So it's obvious this is incumbent upon government to make sure that we're protecting the price and while still making sure that this food can go to needy Americans. So thanks for your leadership quickly on those two issues. And I'm glad you brought up a broader point. We're really appreciative to the Florida Cattlemen's Association, to Citrus Mutual, and to Florida Farm Bureau for giving us ideas over the past couple of weeks. Most of this is going to come from you all telling us what you need. So please continue with those ideas. We're going to talk in a little bit about the letters that we've signed on to, many at your urging. And we appreciate, of course, Commissioner Freed being on the line. We're now going to turn to talking briefly about some of the major provisions of the CARES Act, followed by a primary focus on the small business relief and the funding through USDA and then we're going to take ample time for questions and suggestions. So first, as you all know, we passed the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, known as the CARES Act. Was the largest economic response and relief package in the nation's history, a $2.2 trillion package, which is an acknowledgement by both parties, by the Congress and the President, about how deep this crisis is and how the American people, including Florida agriculture, need our help in the short term. There are $1,200 checks going out to most Americans, those making $75,000 or less based upon their 2018 or 2019 tax return. A family of four making under $150,000 a year can expect $3,400 coming in. For those of you who get your tax return through direct deposit, you should be receiving your funds this week. And those of you who are Social Security beneficiaries, 99% of you also receive your checks via direct deposit, so you'll receive your stimulus check via direct deposit. For those of you making between $75,000 and $100,000 a year, you will be eligible for a smaller check on a sliding scale. And right now, for those who did not make enough money to file tax returns over the last 2 years, there's already an IRS internet portal to sign up for direct deposit. And we've been told by Treasury by the end of the week that tax filers will have an option to request direct deposit. And of course, you'll be able to track that funding on that IRS portal. So we strongly urge all of you who are eligible to request direct deposit. Otherwise, it could take weeks, unfortunately, for some of you to get those checks physically. It'll go from the poorest to the wealthiest of Americans who qualify for this stimulus. In addition, many of you may know folks who lost their jobs or lost hours. There is a new federal unemployment benefit of $600 per week for up to 4 months. It applies to folks who are employees who lost their job, employees who lost hours, and it also applies to independent contractors, those who get 1099 IRS forms who work in the ag economy, whether it be consultants or part-time laborers who are U.S. citizens or others. I should mention too, under the stimulus checks, that those with Social Security numbers are eligible. So that means that all U.S. citizens, some dreamers who under DACA secured a Social Security number, or even some long-term work permit immigrants who are eligible for Social Security numbers are eligible. Of course, folks who don't have Social Security numbers are not eligible. The $600 federal unemployment benefit is on top of the $275 per week in state benefits for up to 12 weeks. We know that the state website has had huge troubles. We just gave the state $29 million in federal funds from the U.S. Department of Labor a little over a week and a half ago to help fix their website. They've employed 72 new servers to help with the online traffic, new paper applications, which you could send back in for free through FedEx. And I encourage people to reach out to their state senators and state representatives for those of you who know folks who are unemployed and seeking that, but certainly they need to fix that in a hurry. Obviously, this is a pandemic, so help for our hospitals and first responders is a top priority. We allocated $130 billion for our hospitals. The first $30 billion was released this past Friday. Florida's hospitals received over $2.2 billion to nearly 22,000 providers. We have been in constant contact with Baycare, with Osceola Regional, with Orlando Health and Advent Health, among other clinics and federally qualified health clinics and health departments to make sure that they're getting what they need. It included $850 million in new funding for personal protective equipment for first responders. And one thing that we do need to fix for the next round, it was based upon fee for service. And Florida's health providers provide a lot of their services via Medicare Advantage, Medicaid, and some of our children's hospitals were also left behind. So we worked on a bipartisan set of letters to take into account Medicare Advantage, Medicaid, and help our children's hospitals. And we're pleased to announce that the administration has mentioned that they will consider those factors. For state and locally, there's $150 billion state and local stimulus funds. Florida's share is $12 billion. This is going to be critical to stabilize the state budget. When we're talking about the efforts of the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, led by Commissioner Nikki Fried, or any other state programs that are important to you, the state will receive $8.3 billion, of which 4.6 will remain with the state to help stabilize their budget, and the remainder will go to local governments. Critical for a lot of the key programs, including citrus relief and rural family lands programs and other key marketing programs that I know are near and dear to so many of you. There'll be another $3.7 billion that the state will receive for specific programs. Some of them may affect USDA and DACs. Locally, Kissimmee received $426,000 so far. Orlando received $2.5 million so far in community development block grants and COVID-19 grants. St. Cloud received nearly $199,000. Osceola County received $936,000. Polk County received $2.2 million, and Orange County received $6.1 million in community development block grants and COVID-19 grants. We are fighting a major inequity. Cities under 50,000 did not receive any community development block grants, which is why we're fighting in the extension of the CARES Act on those negotiations going on right now to help a lot of these rural cities that are too big to get USDA funding. Essentially, they're over 25 to 30,000 people, but they're under 50,000. Cities such as Winter Haven, Lake Wales, and Haines City fall into those categories. So we are working on making sure they're going to qualify. And lastly, there's $48.9 billion for food assistance and to help agriculture. This is starting to flow to the state, whether it's through Second Harvest in our food banks or through USDA. I want to announce some of the breakdown of that specifically that USDA has mentioned from that nearly $50 billion. $9.5 billion of that is dedicated to the disaster fund to help farmers with targeted support for fruit and vegetable growers, dairy and livestock farmers, and local food producers. $14 billion will fund the Commodity Credit Corporation Farm Bill's Farm Safety Net. $10 million will be for small business interruption loans for eligible farmers. $3 million will be for additional USDA farm services agents. There's also assistance for small towns and rural communities. $1 billion in guaranteed loans to help rural businesses. $100 billion to help hospitals. We talked about that before, which will include rural areas. A key part of that is expanding telehealth. There are a lot of folks who live in rural Osceola County or rural parts of Polk County that are miles away from hospitals. So the additional $25 million for telehealth is going to be critical to make sure we have equal access for folks, regardless of where they live in Florida's 9th congressional district. $100 million for high-speed internet expansion for small towns and rural communities. This is particularly important since most of our students are learning through distance learning, and some of our small businesses still lack a strong connection. And some of you may use Wi-Fi and other access to the internet to help with your ag operations. $70 million for the U.S. Forest Service to stop the spread of coronavirus through personal protective equipment for our first responders. There's some other protections for consumers in the food supply, including $55 million for inspection and quarantine at our borders to protect against invasive pest and animal diseases. We know this is critical for Florida as we continue to combat invasive species and animal diseases. $33 million for overtime and temporary food safety inspectors to protect America's food supply at meat processing plants. $45 million to ensure quality produce and meat ranches reaches grocery stores through increased support for the agricultural marketing services, and $1.5 million to expedite EPA approvals of disinfectants needed to control the spread of coronavirus. Lastly, I want to go into the small business relief that I know is there are some inadequacies related to agriculture that we'll be fighting for in the extension. The Congress, through the CARES Act, passed a $367 billion loan program for small businesses. The first part is the $10,000 in emergency grants, and the second is the $350 billion Paycheck Protection Program. We've seen over 2/3 of the $350 billion already committed in the last 12 days since April 3rd. And I want to address some frequently asked questions that many of you may have regarding this program. So first, are agriculture producers, farmers, and ranchers eligible for the Small Business Administration's Paycheck Protection Program? Agriculture producers, farmers, and ranchers with 500 or fewer employees whose principal place of residence is in the United States are eligible. Farmers are eligible if the farm has 500 or less employees or fits within the revenue-based size standard, which is an average annual receipts of $1 million. Farms can qualify for the Paycheck Protection Program if it meets SBA's alternative size standard as well. The alternative size standard is currently a maximum net worth of the business not more than $15 million, and the average net income federal taxes of the business for the 2 full fiscal years before the date of the application are not more than $5 million. So there's 2 different ways: 500 employees or less, or based upon annual receipts of $1 million, or the alternative size method, which is a maximum net worth of not more than $15 million for an average federal income tax for 2 fiscal years of $5 million or less per year. Another question: are agriculture and other forms of cooperatives eligible for the Paycheck Protection Program? As long as other eligibility requirements are met, small agriculture cooperatives may receive Paycheck Protection Program loans. Other forms of cooperatives may be eligible provided they comply with all the loan program requirements. Another question that we've received: do H-2A or H-2B workers on my payroll count towards my eligibility and total possible loan amount? Only employees with a principal place of residence in the U.S. count towards eligibility in calculation of the Paycheck Protection loan amount. So this is where a lot of our farmers, ranchers, and growers end up dropping off from. Many of you may be small family farms that don't have a payroll because it's the family just working on the farm, and you fund your incomes just through the net profits at the end of the year without having payroll. That takes out a lot of our family farms. Many of you may have the vast majority or all your workforce be H-2A or H-2B workers, which again would make it eligible. And that's why we have a lot of our farmers, ranchers, and growers across the nation who are not eligible right now. And so what we're doing right now is making sure in this next round that you may be reading about, that Congress is negotiating $250 billion for a continuation of the Paycheck Protection Program. The House is leading our offer with segmenting half of that $250 billion for small family farms, regardless of these requirements, for veteran-owned businesses, for minority and women-owned businesses, and for to be delivered through community banks, because we've seen a lot of farmers left behind, a lot of really small businesses left behind, and a lot of community banks that are left behind. So we are fighting to make sure that we could ease up these rules so those of you who fall into one of those two exceptions where you don't have a payroll because it's your family and you're not establishing a payroll, or because your workforce is primarily farm workers on visas. So we need to fix those things. Lastly, I want to talk about the letters that we signed on to help upon many of your urgings. We signed on to a letter led by Senator Rubio with the Florida delegation to Secretary Perdue, requesting direct financial assistance to producers, consideration of Section 32 commodity purchases, and offering increased programmatic flexibility in the administration of the Child Nutrition Program and the Emergency Food Assistance Program, otherwise known as TFAP. We also led a letter with Congressman Brian Mast to Secretary Perdue and Ambassador Lighthouser urging financial assistance to producers, Section 32 commodity purchases, and other possible forms of aid under the CARES Act. We also joined Congresswoman Mercosel Powell and Shalala in a letter to USDA to use discretionary authority to facilitate the purchase of produce so that these high quality nutritious products will not be left in the fields and facilities to waste. We signed on to another letter with Congressman Hastings and others from the delegation to SBA Administrator Carranza to make sure that farmers can access the Emergency Insurance Disaster Loan Program. And lastly, we signed on to a letter, again, meeting with Congressman Brian Mast, my Republican colleague that we work a lot with on, for the Treasury Department to establish a priority for loan applications for the food service distribution industry. With that, I want to thank you all again, particularly the Farm Bureau, Cattlemen's Association, Citrus Mutual, and others who've helped us with so many of these ideas. And at this point, we will begin the question and answer and comment portion. We have an hour and a half slated, so we have plenty of time to hear from you about any issues that you all may have, or just comments or suggestions. With that, Darren Bearday, why don't we begin the question and comment section of our teleconference.
Sounds good. Thank you, Congressman. As Congressman Soto just said, we're going to turn to the Q&A. So again, in order to unmute yourself and ask a question, if you're on the phone, press *6 if you're calling in, or you can press the unmute button at the top right-hand corner of the video screen if you're on Zoom. State your name, your entity that you're representing, and then be mindful to mute yourself when you're not speaking. It sounds like we've already got somebody that has a question, Congressman. Go ahead.
Wonderful.
Yes? Questions or comments? I thought I heard somebody's trying to speak.
Yes.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Bobby Biggles, Executive Director of Orange County Farm Bureau. I want to thank you and your staff for the great job you've done on the H-2A program in January, getting the fruit pickers into Central Florida to harvest the fruit and stuff. Has any other organization since then had the same H-2A programs that the citrus growers had at first part of the year getting help into the state of Florida?
So first of all, thank you, Bobby, and we appreciate all the great work you all do in Orange County. We have had the best strategy we've been able to utilize right now is to try to just simply keep those farm workers on visas that we have already in Central Florida, since it's been really tough to get new folks on visas through the southern border. We have had, I believe, Guatemala reach out to us, and I'm going to give Darren Verde a chance to be able to elaborate on this in a second about working directly with our office on getting some more of these farm workers in that traditionally have been an integral part of Florida agriculture on a seasonal basis. We have had some losses of folks, though. In Polk County, we had some folks that we were trying to extend their visas from certain, I believe, fruit growers to some of our blueberry growers, and the labor company that they were working with wouldn't answer my calls, and literally got them all on a bus and drove back to the border, even though I believe USDA would have worked with them. So it's really important while people are still well into their visas that we know with a shortage of farm worker workforce, if anybody needs extensions, or if you're going to need farm workers at any point soon, that we know well in advance, so that we don't get into a point where labor firms are nervous that they're going to be in violation of Florida law or of federal law, or end up being part of a contribution of COVID-19 or something of that nature. That's what we had heard from this gentleman. Darren, do you want to elaborate a little bit on the situation with trying to get some of those?
Yeah, this happened at the end of March, which was right. So we had a couple of our blueberry producers in Polk have an issue with getting H-2A workers, like the congressman said. We have found that Department of Labor is allowing for transfers in contracts for H-2A workers. It's just that the contractors have no incentive to keep or send them back. We also have a website that was shared to us. If you want to email me at the email, I put it in the chat room, but I'll put it back there again. I can share that website with you. And I'm still waiting on a reply, but as the congressman said, we've been contacted by the embassy in Guatemala, and they're happy, at least they were a few weeks ago, to allow for H-2A workers. But as I said, I still have not heard a reply there, but we're checking into the situation as we speak. So,
and this brings up a great point. We're going to be pushing to incentivize labor firms to seek extensions and work with each of you individually to help with that as well. Darren, please make a note of that for our ledge team, because that can potentially get into the CARES extension package that's being negotiated right now. We do need to incentivize to keep our workforce here so that we can take advantage of every possibility to continue to keep agriculture going strong. Thanks, Bobby, for that great question. And please, everybody, reach out to us individually.
You're welcome.
Looks like Jim's ready.
Congress,
Jim, thanks for being on the line.
thank you, Congressman, and thank you, Commissioner Freed, if you're still on. This is Jim Handley with the Florida Cattlemen's Association. We greatly appreciate everything you all are doing with this unprecedented situation that we're all dealing with. The Cattlemen's Association, the Florida Cattlemen's Association, in conjunction with the National Cattlemen's Beef Association and other state organizations around the country, commissioned a group of very, very highly qualified economists to quantify the losses suffered by our industry nationwide. And we made that available last evening to the USDA, and I sent it just this very morning to the entire Florida delegation, asking you all to please weigh in with Secretary Perdue and his USDA team as they craft a relief package for Florida's farmers and ranchers, and basically the ranchers and beef producers nationwide. The calculation is real. The numbers, like almost $14 billion that our ranchers have taken a hit. And we've got to sustain them if they're going to continue to grow protein feed the nation and feed the world. I mean, it's a national defense issue. So I just ask you to, if you could, give that a look. I think I saw Nicole on the call. I specifically sent it to her and everybody I could find in the delegation staff. But now's the time. The USDA this week is crafting the relief program, if you will. And if you would weigh in on our behalf, we would greatly appreciate it.
Jim, we're happy to do that. We will start working on a letter today. And traditionally, I've led a lot of these letters with Congressman Yoho. So we'll reach out to his office today, and we'll certainly cite as part of the appendix to that letter that study that you provided to us. When I saw and have been briefed on the Smithfield issue that we saw in the Dakotas right now with a huge part of our beef production offline for a few days, potentially weeks, we know we can't have more bottlenecks like that. Right now, it is continues to be a point of confidence to the American people that we have enough food, and we get briefings each week by Chairman Peterson. But he did warn us this week, after weeks of saying we have plenty of food, that we could have long-term supply effects if some of these major beef producers continue to have to shut down for different COVID-19 related issues, and so. We know we're closely watching the cattle supply chain and other protein supply chains, particularly after that Smithfield incident, because we want them obviously up and running again. We also want to keep folks safe and not have an outbreak. So we're going to do everything we can. But yes, we will get out a letter. We'll have a draft ready today. And Dusty's been great to continue to work with our staff. He was the one who worked with us on some of the last letters we worked on for the cattlemen. So we will work today and try to get a draft out to Congressman Yoho so that we could co-author it and then see if we could get as many of the delegation on board as possible. But thanks for doing the legwork for us to help you because we're dealing with every sector right now. So now's the time to step up to help us because we want to help you. But having some of the resources at their disposal that the National Cattlemen's Association has so critical. So we'll definitely be helping and put together a letter by the end of today for Congressman Yoho and potentially as soon as tomorrow, get it out to the delegation.
Thank you very much.
You can count on it. Let's take our next question.
Anyone else have any questions or comments for the Congressman?
Please, and we have plenty of time. We have slated till 2:30. So even if it's just comments or suggestions, we want to hear from you all.
You can also use the chat feature, which is down below right here, to type out a question if you don't have a good. I think I heard somebody. No.
Okay. Well, I don't want to waste everybody's time. I know how busy you all are. If there are any other questions, this is a continuation of a conversation. So we want to continue to hear from you. Feel free to reach out to both Nicole McLaren and our Ledge team, as well as Darren Verde. And I'm pleased to announce after a long hiatus from working through health issues, Tracy Brooks is slowly but surely starting to work again with the office after being on leave. And I know she's traditionally been our ag liaison, having been raised in a citrus family. And so we're really pleased to see her feeling mostly better and back to work. So you'll start to be able to work with her. Oh, Tracy, do we have you on the phone?
I'm here.
Tracy.
We're so happy to have you back, Tracy.
Hi, everybody. It's good to be back. It's good to see some of the names that have shown up. Thanks for joining, everyone. Hey, Ricky.
Like that hat, Ricky. Well, we're pleased to have her back, and obviously she'll over the next couple of days or weeks be reaching out to you all to touch base. In the meantime, I know how busy you all are, so we don't want to take up any more of your time if there's no other questions. So just please continue to keep us posted on the resources and what you all need. The food supply is fundamental to not only the American people and feeding everyone, but to our national security. And so we want to make sure that we're fighting for our fair share for Florida's agriculture. Thank you, everybody, for what you do, and keep us posted. And God bless you all, and hope that your families stay safe and healthy, and as for your teams as well. This concludes our teleconference, and don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.